I'm telling you the title of the sermon at the very beginning, and I'm hoping that you will stay with me, that you won't turn me off, because for many of us, All Saints' Day is not a day that we've celebrated in the Christian year. I know the church where I grew up, we were really big on Christmas. We were really big on Easter. As far as I can remember, those were the only two Christian holidays that we observed in the church. So I want to talk about All Saints' Day, and I want you to think about something. I'm going to ask you in a few minutes to go to the mirror, the nearest mirror, look in it, and say, I am a saint. Don't go to your spouse to say that. Go to a mirror. All Saints' Day. As I said, when I was growing up, I had no idea about any of the implications of All Saints' Day. I think the first I really heard about it was my friend Danny, who was sort of the token, his family and he were the token Catholics in our neighborhood. We were about 10 or 11, and I went to his house, and we were having this deep theological conversation. I said, Danny, how come the name of your school is St. Thomas? And my school is Fairlawn. Your school sounds a whole lot better, St. Thomas. I said, Danny, what is a saint? You're a Catholic. What is a saint? He said, I really don't know, but I guess it's somebody who did just about everything in their lives the way God wanted them to do it. And so I learned that if I were a Catholic, I would probably be attending a school that had a saint's name on it. But I'm a part of the Protestant Reformation. 1517, Martin Luther nailed the theses on the wall of the Wittenberg Church. And all of a sudden, you and I have lost any saints that we ever had. That's one way of looking at All Saints' Day. The Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and the Greek Orthodox Church all have people that they designate as saints. Good people, people who made a difference, people who sacrificed, people who are committed to Christ. Why, there are over 10,000 saints in the Roman Catholic Church alone. But maybe the way that I learned saint wasn't that way. It was when my minister at home would preach a sermon from the 12th chapter of Hebrews and would talk about the cloud of witnesses. It was a wonderful image for all of us who were sitting there. Basically, what he was saying is that in a way we didn't understand, that all of the people whom we had loved and who had died and had gone to heaven, all of those people were cheering for us. All of those people were encouraging us in our lives. Not just people that we knew, but I'm talking about people like Abraham, Isaac, and Sarah. I'm talking about reaching back in to the Old Testament. And then I'm talking about the saints that I did know. So many I couldn't even begin to tell their stories, people who have encouraged me and touched my life. But I will never forget Mrs. Miller in my home church. She knew the Bible. better than the pastor. She sat on the second row of our church. Her husband had passed away. Nobody ever sat beside her, not because she was unfriendly, but because it was almost as if you were sitting next to God if you sat next to Miss Miller. Mrs. Miller gave me one of my first Bibles. Frankly, it's not a Bible that I use very much anymore, but I have it on my shelf. And every time I look at it, I remember how much encouragement Mrs. Miller was to me. I believe she is with God. And maybe once in a while, she looks down, she sees me, and she gives a word of blessing. A third way that All Saints' Day has been used is to remember in the church those who have died in the year before. Maybe a candle is lighted for each person. The family comes down the aisle. And what the church does is what the church really needs to do more often. And that is the exercise in memory. You and I always stand on the shoulders of the people who have gone before us, the people who have sacrificed, the people who have laid the foundation. And every time we come to the church and a family who has a deceased relative that year walks down the aisle, we remember we're not the first ones in that church, and neither will we be the last ones in that church. But what I really want to talk about is the fact that all of us are saints. I know what you're saying. You don't know me. You don't know how badly I have failed. You don't know of the things I have done wrong. I'm not a saint. But I want to tell you, if you believe in Jesus Christ as your Lord and you are following him, you are a saint. Don't take it from me. Take it from St. Paul. Almost every church he wrote, to all of the saints in Rome, to the saints in Galatia, to the saints in Colossae, to the saints in Philippi, almost every church he wrote. Was he just talking about a few people who were really good? No. The word saint means to be set aside. A saint is not somebody who is good enough for God, but a saint is somebody who understands what undergirds us is not our goodness, it is God's grace. No, the people in Rome and Colossae and Galatian and in Galatia, none of these people were perfect. But all of them, when they made their profession of faith in Jesus Christ, all of them were set aside to spread the message of Christ, set aside to love God with all that they were, set aside to love their neighbor and to love their enemies, set aside to love others as they love themselves because God loved them so much. That's why I said at the beginning, I want you to go and look in the mirror, and I want you to say, I am a saint. Now, don't tell me that you're not good enough, because I already know that you're not, and I'm not, and nobody else is good enough. But I'm here to tell you, God has called us to be set apart, to try to do the things that God has called us to do. But I want us to remember that whatever hope we have in our lives, whatever we are by the grace of God. Have you gotten to the mirror? Look at yourself. You are a saint. Amen.